Hello, everyone, and welcome to Proline, the longest-running sports handicapping show in America. I'm John Cranton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Sod. He's been running Las Vegas Sports Services for 14 years. We're going to take a look at some NBA teams that have, well, packed in the season with less than a week to go. Should you bet against them or on them? Plus some over-under betting tips to look at. Also going to take a look at some bubble teams in the East and the West. But first, Jeff, I know you had that dynamite March Madness run. And then you've continued that right over in baseball, 21-7, as well as the NBA, an 11-4 run. How can folks get aboard Las Vegas Sports Services?
Yeah, 11-4 run in the NBA, 21-7 in baseball, 8-1 with my baseball best bets. You can get the rest of April in both baseball and NBA for only $25. Call LVSS at 1-866-575-8916. I'm on a tremendous run in both sports right now. Everyone's making money. So you want to get this deal. It's the rest of April, baseball, NBA, $25, 1-866-575-8916.
All right, and Mr. Vegas enjoyed Tuesday 5-1 with all plays, and then he followed up Wednesday with his NBA Game of the Year. That was the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were dog at the Clippers and won the game straight up, 107-101. You can get on board the rest of April baseball and hoops, including the playoffs with Mr. Vegas, just for $19 at 1-866-896-1627. And remember, on Friday, Jim Feist, who's been on a red-hot run with everything, has his NBA Game of the Year. Doesn't give him out very often. He's 9-5 with NBA Games of the Year this season. This is the overall Game of the Year. It's $100 online at jimfeist.com. But you can get it for $25 with a guarantee you will win. To get the playoffs free on Jim, just call 1-866-841-1655. All right, let's start with how we got a question from Twitter, how to assess coaches resting down the stretch. And this is something you out there can get involved. If you want to Twitter us a question, we're at Twitter at Jim Feist Sports, or just go to Facebook at Proline TV. And basically what the caller wants to know is what do coaches do? Why are coaches resting these players down the stretch, and how to assess it? You know, it's relatively a new phenomenon in the NBA, coaches resting players, and it can be difficult to inculcate this into handicapping for the stretch run and the postseason. You know, I recall Bill Fitch, the coach, for a very successful coach for decades, he used to say, you get in the spring what you plant over the winter, meaning he was not a proponent of resting guys and coasting in games. And that's because he wanted players to be at the top of their game all season long. He valued the higher seed. He had great value on home court. For the playoffs, he felt that every edge was important. And a generation before him, Red Auerbach, really applied the same philosophy. He didn't believe in coasting in games, or even if you had a 10-game lead in the division, because he used to say he felt that players would develop bad habits, and then that would carry over into the postseason, and it could hurt you. However, more recently, we've seen a shift in this trend. I mean, the Celtics under Doc Rivers did it a couple times where he rested veteran players down the stretch. The 2010 season basically took the second half of the year off. They really stumbled badly down the stretch. I wrote them off, as a lot of people did. And then as a number 4 seed, they were sensational in the playoffs, getting all the way to Game 7 of the NBA Finals. We've seen the Spurs do it the last 4 years, resting guys. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I think it depends on the individual team, whether guys are hurt, like in the case of the Houston Rockets right now with Beverly and Dwight Howard out, as opposed to teams that have a big lead and want to coast. Jeff, we just saw the Indiana Pacers rest all 5 guys, and I thought it was unusual because here they're fighting for the number 1 and 2 seed, and they rested all of them. I mean, did Frank Vogel have some kind of epiphany, or was he just desperate, or was he very smart in doing this?
Well, the way the starters have been playing for Indiana, the reserves couldn't have done much worse. They still won the game. The line opened around 5.5 and went down to 1. The Pacers won by 2, so that if you got in late, you won with the Pacers anyway. I'm not sure what happened to that team. I think their bad offense has caught up with them. Back in December, no one would have thought that they'd have this terrible run here. I think at one point they were 4-21 against the spread. So the Pacers right now are in trouble. You can get by with a bad offense only for so long. Other teams make adjustments, and you don't have an offense to back it up as a backup. So right now, if we're talking about who's going to win the East, I think it might be the Miami Heat by default, because I don't see anybody else, including the Pacers, even having a chance right now the way they're playing. I remember 20 years ago, before the offshores came aboard, this time of the year, a lot of the books here in Las Vegas just wouldn't put up lines in the NBA. There would be injuries. They wouldn't know which players the coaches are going to play, so they just wouldn't do it. But now, with the offshores putting up lines for every game, you can get some advantages here because the bookmakers it's a guessing game for them too. They got to put up a line, and sometimes they don't know who's going to play and who's not going to play. So if you pay attention, you might be able to get some value here. But this time of year, it's very difficult, and coaches, it's like preseason football. Some like to win, and some don't care about it. With the NBA, some like the rest of their starters, some don't. There's no right or wrong. It just depends what your philosophy is. So this last week of the NBA season is it's touch and go. So you have to be very careful, John.
Well, you mentioned the Indiana Pacers being a bad offensive team and it caught up with them. I would agree with that completely. I've been noticing that for months. This is a team that I think their bench is better than we've seen much of this season. I think they have the capability to be a better offensive team, to be more aggressive going up tempo and fall back on their defense when they need it, but they really don't do that. Their philosophy is to play a slower pace game, focus all out on defense. Don't quite agree with it, and I think the lack of offense has been the biggest factor in the last 2 months. They just go through cold stretches, and they seem to lose confidence at both ends. We'll see if they can turn it around. Before we get into some of the bubble teams, let's take a look at some teams in this last week that might be go-against teams, certainly teams that are out of the playoff race, and you have to approach those teams from a handicapping perspective a little bit differently of whether teams want to work hard or whether they're thinking about going on a vacation. Jeff, I know you spent some time in Detroit. Are these Pistons ready to play hard in the final week, or have they checked out already?
They haven't played hard the whole season. Why would they do it now? It's just a terrible situation there. They don't play defense. They have no leadership, no chemistry. Joe Dumars, the GM, is probably going to resign at the end of the season, which would be a good thing. He had some great years there, but lately he just lost his touch. His hands were tied for a couple of years there with the change of ownership, but still, there's no excuse for the way the Pistons have played the last few years, and there's still certainly no excuse for his Dumars' inexplicable decision to draft Darko Milicic back in 2003 ahead of Carmelo Anthony, Bosh, and Wade. He'll never live that one down, and he shouldn't. So the only trouble is Detroit fans have one thing to worry about. There was a rumor out there that they might replace him with Isaiah Thomas, and that would be 10 times worse. Thomas has been a disaster in every job he's held since his playing career ended. So hopefully for Detroit fans that doesn't happen. But this team definitely needs to change because right now they look awful. Obviously, they hit rock bottom when they got blown out by the 76ers after the 76ers lost 26 games in a row. So once in a while, they'll like the Hawks. They beat the Hawks on Tuesday. Then the next night they get blown out by the Cavaliers. So this team is right now is just terrible, and they need a total change of leadership there, John.
Well, you're still angry about Darko, huh? But that was not a good pick.
It's unbelievable. There's no explanation for that.
It was Carmelo Anthony and around that, too.
Bosh and Wade. He passed on all three of those.
Oh, that's some bad assessment there. Well, speaking of bad assessments, I'll take a look at the 76ers because here's a team that really they're dead men walking. They've given up on the season a long time ago. You have to start with the defense. They just haven't played it all year long. 30th in the NBA in points allowed, 27th in field goal shooting defense, allowing 47%. And they can't defend the three-pointer either. They're tied for 23rd, allowing over 37%. The game they had the other night against Toronto, they lost to give up 125 points. They allowed 50% shooting, and Toronto was 12 of 25 from beyond the arc. I mean, that's just inexcusable. That's way too many open jumpers from long range. No defense at all. The one bright spot, if you want to call it, is the rookie Mike Carter-Williams. But take a closer look at the kid. 3.6 turnovers per game. That ranks among the worst in the NBA. And here's some spread trends to keep in mind. When the Sixers score 100 points a game, which they can do at times because they're up-tempo, they're horrendous the next game, 8-20 against the spread. They're 5-0 over the total after a loss, and they had a recent stretch at home where they were 6-22 against the spread. Absolute money burners. There's no way in the final week I'm going to be putting anybody's money, including my own, on the 76ers. Jeff, Milwaukee is another team that has been a catastrophe. Would you go to war with those clowns?
No. Well, we knew at the beginning of the season they'd be bad, and they followed through on that. They're near the bottom in scoring, points allowed, and rebounds. 19 and 39 against the spread versus winning teams. Right now, they're on the top spot for the draft lottery. Of course, they lost at home to the Pacers when the Pacers rested all 5 starters. The last time Milwaukee beat a team with a current winning record was on December 10th at Chicago. So this team, this is 25th in points allowed, 26th in field goal shooting defense, last at defending the 38%. The Bucks are just a team that I can't imagine fans are spending money to watch this team. They're just absolutely terrible, and like the 76ers, they're just waiting for that draft lottery.
Well, I'm going to take a look at the Sacramento Kings. You know, when you first look at the roster, you think, well, you know, they've got 3 nice offensive pieces to build around. But what's happened down the stretch is Rudy Gay's been injured and Isaiah Thomas has missed over 8 straight games. And that's the only thing that they do well is run and score, particularly at home. Schedule maker hasn't been kind to the Kings. 6 of their final 7 games are going to be against playoff teams or ones fighting for playoff spots down the stretch. For all their offensive prowess, they're only 30th in the NBA in assists, so that speaks to some really major problems with the offense. And the defense is even worse. They've been a disaster all year, 24th in the NBA in points allowed, second to last at defending the three-pointer, almost 38 points per game, too many wide-open shots along the perimeter. And with the injury to Isaiah Thomas, it's really taken a bite out of their offense. They've had to start the rookie Ray McCallum. He had a couple of good games, but then he went back-to-back games where he went 6 and 26 shooting from the field over 2 games, struggled badly. So really it's Gay and DeMarcus Cousins and no defense. So it's a team that has also been very bad as soon as the month of March started. So I'm not going to be backing this team at all. And their offense has slipped in the month of March with Thomas out, and that's the only thing that they rely on. So I would be very cautious about backing a team that I think is already checked out mentally and on vacation. Be careful about going against them on the road and even at home. All right, Jeff, how about the New Orleans Pelicans? They're not going to be in the playoffs, but not a bad young team to build around.
Yeah, unlike the other teams we talked about, this team is closer to being a good team or a playoff contender than the other ones. It's a young team, but they're still learning how to win on the road. They're 12 and 27 on the road this year, 14 and 21 against the spread, but they might not win another game this season. The last 4 games are home and aways against Oklahoma City and Houston, and plus they have all kinds of injuries. Eric Gordon, Anthony Davis have knee and back problems, and of course Ryan Anderson and Drew Holiday out for the year. So the Pelicans do have a bright future, a brighter immediate future than the teams we just talked about, but the rest of this season doesn't look good because they have 4 tough games left, and they're depleted, John.
That's right. Okay, before we get to the NBA bubble teams, if you want to get free daily plays sent right to your cell phone, you can get them every day from Dave Koken just by texting Koken to 313131. If you want to get them every day from Jim Feist, send right to your cell phone, just text winner to 313131. All right, in the NBA, we got quite a few bubble teams down the stretch. Let's start with the East. For the last couple of weeks, it's really been the Knicks, Cavaliers, and Atlanta. The Cavaliers, though, just got knocked out, even though they won at home on Wednesday. So it's really down to these 2 teams. And the Atlanta Hawks are the ones who are kind of sitting pretty, depending on the schedule for the last week of the season. How do they stand out?
Well, they're sitting pretty as far as the playoff position, but they don't look pretty as a team. It's really that's a terrible road team, 12 and 27. It's ridiculous that a team this bad would be in the playoffs. They're totally inconsistent. They lost to an awful Detroit team at home. Then they came back and beat Boston on Wednesday, even though they were down 9 points in the fourth quarter. They had to play at Brooklyn and then at home versus the Heat on Saturday. We could have a team here with about a 440 winning percentage in the first round of the playoffs. Atlanta's just 35-43 against the spread, 15-23-1 against the spread on the road. The Hawks are the only reason they're in the playoffs because in the Eastern Conference, they're not a good team. When they lost Al Horford, the season pretty much was in trouble right there. But there will be a one-and-done team in the playoffs, John.
Okay, well, I know the Cavaliers are out of it, but coming down the stretch here, the last few games, I would be hesitant to go against this team for a couple of reasons. First of all, they do play hard for Mike Brown, particularly on the defensive end, and when they're at home, they're 16-8 under the total run. They do bring that defense at home. they do have some weaknesses because the 6-game stretch where everything was on the line to try and make the playoffs, they went 3-3, had some good wins, but also they stumbled, particularly at home against Charlotte. Boy, they were a 3-point home favorite, shot just 36.5% and lost in overtime, just a killer. They do have some talent, though, unlike some of these teams that are out of it. Lowell Deng, Spencer Hawes, a nice 7-footer, and Kyrie Irving. And even the night that they lost, they blew out the Pistons. We just talked about them. That was a 122-100 run. So it's a team that is playing hard for the coach. They seem to be a happy team despite some limitations. Still going to be a team, I think, to back under the total at home. But keep in mind that Irving, after that loss, when he found out they were not going to be in the playoffs, he said, boy, it's just an empty feeling knowing your chances are done. So he's been in the league 3 years now and hasn't made the playoffs. Keep an eye on the emotional state of this team. But I wouldn't bet against them because they have been playing hard for the coach. All right, Jeff, the last team here would be the wild and wacky New York Knicks. Last month we saw a 7-game losing streak followed by an 8-game winning streak. I'm not sure what to make of this team. Are they a postseason threat?
No, not even a regular season threat right now. They're another totally inconsistent team. They had, as you said, long winning streaks and long losing streaks. They're just waiting for the season to get over so they can get another coach and then to have Phil Jackson start working his magic to try to turn this franchise around. They're not going to catch Atlanta because the last 4 games they got Toronto twice and then Chicago, and then they have they play Brooklyn, but it's going to be a big revenge game for the Brooklyn Nets because they were embarrassed by the Knicks last week. I think it was by 29 points. So nothing looks good for the Knicks right now as far as the rest of the regular season goes. But after this season's over, they do have Phil Jackson there in the front office. So there is hope for Knicks fans, John.
Well, they could use Phil Jackson in the low post grabbing some rebounds, too, but I doubt that's going to happen. Okay, let's take a look at the Western Conference is clearly the better overall conference, and the stretch run for 3 teams has really been fascinating, and it's going to be great over the weekend and into next week. You got the Phoenix Suns, the Dallas Mavericks sitting in the number 7 and 8 playoff seeds right now, but, boy, these Memphis Grizzlies are right behind. I'll start by taking a look at the Grizzlies. I would be wary of this team if I were Phoenix and Dallas. Big front court muscle, love to play defense. Keep in mind they're on a 10-5 run under the total with that defense. They've won 12 consecutive games at home. In the most recent game, they had the Miami Heat at home, and they were very impressive. Didn't go into the total, but they did everything else well as they beat up Miami 107-102. Boy, Zach Randolph, 25 points, 11 rebounds. Marc Gasol, 20 points, 14 rebounds, keeping this team in the hunt. It's still a terrific defensive team when they play a team with a winning record. Memphis is 11-4 under the total, but they haven't lost at home in a while. So I know the other teams, Jeff, are right in there in better shape, but this Memphis team is playing exceptionally good ball. What about the Phoenix Suns? I know they have a very good backcourt. I know they've been covering on the road. Do they have things in their favor?
And a great coach, too. Jeff Hornacek, I think, is a great candidate for Coach of the Year honors. This is one team before the season started that people thought would be one of the tanking teams, but it turned out just the opposite. They've been a tremendous moneymaker this year, 50-27 against the spread, 23-16 at home, 27-11 on the road. But they do have a tough trip coming up at San Antonio and Dallas. They're home versus the Grizzlies, and then they go at Sacramento. That game versus the Grizzlies probably will decide who gets to the playoffs. Memphis has a tiebreaker because they're 3-0 against the Suns this season, so that's a huge game for the Suns. This is really a success story this year for the Suns. Their future looks bright, and but they do have a tough last 4 games here, so they'll probably be favorites in the home game. That's about it. But it should be the game against Memphis is huge.
Well, the team that certainly has quite a few things in their favor would be the Dallas Mavericks. You want to have veteran leadership and offense this kind of year. They certainly have it. They've been phenomenal, the Mavericks have on the road, 45-19 against the spread in road games, top 10 offense. But they do have some problems on defense. 21st in points allowed. That's been a concern all season. Field goal shooting defense, they rank 23rd. And, boy, you need that to win these games against good teams as well as to have some kind of a playoff run. The schedule hasn't lined up well for them. Dirk Nowitzki has been hot of late, averaging over 24 points and shooting 59% for the month. But, boy, look at the schedule. The last 3 games, which Dallas is going to need, they play the San Antonio Spurs, the Phoenix Suns, and the Memphis Grizzlies. So we just talked about the 2 teams that are neck and neck. They have to play each other, which is going to be fascinating. And all in all, I'm going to give the edge to Memphis based on the schedule coming down the stretch. And Dallas, if Dallas does get in, very good team as far as leadership and offensive talent to pull some surprises in the playoffs. I wouldn't want to play them. On the other hand, the lack of defense, I can't see them going deep into the playoffs because of that defense. Okay, let's take a look at some of the offers we have coming up, Mr. Vegas. You can get the rest of the NBA and baseball through the month of April. For $19, he was off a 5-1 Tuesday, won his NBA Game of the Year on Wednesday on Oklahoma City. You can get the rest of April from Mr. Vegas, 1-866-896-1627. Jeff at Las Vegas Sports Services, 21-7 baseball run, terrific NBA run as well.
Yeah, 8-1 in baseball best bets. I won my game of the week Wednesday with the Brewers over the Phillies. I won a blockbuster in the NBA Wednesday with the Bulls over the Timberwolves. 11-4 run in the NBA. If you're going to get the rest of April, NBA and baseball, for only $25, call LVSS 1-866-575-8916. Says the rest of April for just $25. 1-866-575-8916.
Okay, let me tell you some runs that Jim Feist has been on. 30-15 with online packages. 33-19-1 college basketball run to end the season. He had UConn when they beat Florida. He's 6-2 with his baseball inner circles. That included a plus 170 with the Milwaukee Brewers beating the Red Sox. A 20-10 baseball run overall. His college tournament games of the year, a perfect 9-0. This Friday, his NBA Game of the Year goes. He's 9-5 with NBA Games of the Year for the entire season. $100 online at jimfeist.com. If you want to get it for $25 with a guarantee, just pick up that phone and call 1-866-841-1655. All right, it's the final lap of the NBA regular season, everybody. Take advantage of these offers from the Vegas pros. Good luck with the games, and we'll see you next week with another edition of Proline.